Hello, magical experimenters. Taylor Ellwood here, and I apologize for the lateness. It's kind of appropriate that of all nights it would happen for when shooting videos, it would be the one in regards to timing and results because, you know, sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. In this case, I needed to, step up and help out around the kitchen some, get dinner, well, basically cook dinner, so other things could get taken care of, and it just is what it is. You just adjust and adapt, or adapt and adjust, which is actually one of my axioms when it comes to magic, because a lot of times you have situations where you're going for something specific or something that you want, and things don't turn out quite the way you expected. Well, you have a few options. You can throw a hissy fit tantrum and pout about the fact that life is throwing you a loop. You can quit, or you can adjust and adapt. And I'm always of the preference of adjusting and adapting to situations. Actually, really, I came up with that particular phrase, adjust and adapt, a few years ago, because I had this idea of how my life was gonna turn out. I was self-employed, and I was doing all right with my businesses. I was steadily growing them, but I made a few mistakes, and I'm always very open about this because I think it's really important to be open about the fact that sometimes you fail. Sometimes things don't succeed the way you expect them to, and unlike most people, I don't believe in putting on a show or puffing up my image. Oh, Taylor never makes mistakes. His magic always works, etc., etc. Well, no, not. Sometimes things don't work. Sometimes things fail. Sometimes you make mistakes. That's part of life, and I think you know I really wish more occultists were that transparent and honest about their mistakes and and everything else, instead of just focused on what works. But I think there's this fear, if you will, in the occult community, and it's an unspoken one for the most part. But I'm going to call it out for what it is, and it's that if I admit that I've made mistakes, people might not think I'm really that much of a magician. If I admit that sometimes my magic has failed, people are going to think, well, he doesn't really have his act together. If I admit that my life isn't as successful as I want it to be, that I don't have everything together in the way that everyone else thinks it ought to be, well, then they're going to point their fingers and laugh at me or whatever. We've all been there and done that. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, let that fear go. It's it's okay to have it, but just acknowledge it and let it go, and just be yourself. Don't be afraid to acknowledge when you make mistakes or when things don't work out the way you thought. Instead, adjust and adapt, because when you adjust to a situation, then you can start adapting it into your favor, and you can turn it into opportunities. Case in point, in my case, you know, in 2017, things went sideways. I mean, in a large part, that was my mistake. I got sucked up into some marketing gurus. They were really good at their things, and I really fell for their spiel. And I wanted to cut some corners, and I, eventually I realized it wasn't going to work. And I had my moment of my hissy fit moment. I did. I had a moment where I was just like, man, I'm so ticked off and upset, and everything else, and then I realized, okay, well, I can continue to be upset, or I can adjust and adapt. I can accept that maybe some people will point their fingers at me and tell me what a fraud or fake or whatever else they think I am. I can accept that I made a mistake, and that it's life, and that's okay. And so that's what I did. I adjusted and I adapted. I accepted that things were just not going to work out the way I wanted them to, and that it was okay. And then I started figuring, I spent 6 months waking up in fear every day. I got to tell you, that is not a fun experience when you wake up feeling fear every day, because you don't know like what you're going to do. For me, my adjustment slash adaptation was accepting, okay, I'm at this call center job I don't want to be at, and I just have to make the best of it right now. And I have to figure out what my next step is, and this is a good place to be. As a coworker and I said, this was the castle of the transitory castle, where we'd found shelter from the storm, and we were just sheltering in the storm, just waiting to figure out what our next steps were. And then, I did figure out my next step. I adjusted and I adapted, and then things turned around. And how, okay, so, great. We're talking about adjusting and adapting. Isn't this supposed to be about timing and results, Taylor? Well, it is. But I wanted to put that in there because part of getting a result is learning how to adjust and adapt, how to accept the situation for what it is, and then start turning it around and adapting it. In my case tonight, the simple choice was I needed to make dinner, so I adjusted to that, and then I adapted it by letting you guys know I was going to be a half hour late. Here I am. So, timing and results in and of itself, where does all this fit into that? Well, a lot of people want results right now, and that's okay. I mean, you want your Veruca salt. You want it now. Other people, myself included, look at it as a matter of timing. When is the best moment for a result going to occur? Sometimes you have, like I said, you have things throw you a sidewinder, a side curve, and you have to adjust and adapt, and then you figure out that the best result happens a little bit later than what you expected. Sometimes you purposely choose when things are going to go, but with the understanding that there's always going to be unknown variables that you don't necessarily know about or can't anticipate or control, because that's just life. There is no time whatsoever that you're 100% in control of the environment around you, and that's another image issue that a lot of occultists struggle with, because they want to be in control of everything. But let's be honest here. You look at your average occultist, and I mean, a lot of them aren't exactly sparkling examples of having their lives under control. They're reacting to things. They're responding to what's coming their way, instead of planning and being proactive. And when I look at timing, in relationship to this idea of, okay, if I live in an environment where I don't have complete control, what do I have control over? Well, I have control over myself, most obviously, and how I respond to things. And I have control over some variables, because that's just, there are certain things that, and this is where magic can come into play, because magic can be a variable that works in our favors. So if I'm going to adjust and adapt a situation in my favor, I'm going to take in that situation, and I'm going to work with the flow instead of trying to paddle against it, work with that path of least resistance, as I've talked about. And at the same time, I'm going to look a little further downstream and figure out, well, when is the best opportunity for things to occur? So let me give you a concrete example. A while ago, like I said, I kind of started to figure out the path of my life. And one of the questions that I had for a while was, did I ever really want to teach classes again? Part of what happened in 2017 is I was, putting all these systems and things in to get together, all these shortcuts, which really weren't shortcuts. They ended up being a serious long cut, if anything. And it was all for creating this stuff around classes, and automating these classes, because my thought was, well, if I can automate the classes and get people to sign up every so often and everything else, that'll take care of everything. Well, It didn't. And by the time everything was all said and done, I was sick and tired of the idea of teaching classes. I was just like, that's it. I'm never going to teach a class again. These people don't value my time. They don't care, etc., etc. That's how I was feeling at the time. I was pretty unhappy. So fast forward to, I don't know, last year or so, I began to think again, should I try and teach classes? And I tried once or twice, and I felt exhausted. And I was like, no, this isn't the right time. So I did a magical working, and I basically did the magical working around the understanding that I might want to teach classes again, and if I did, I wanted the opportunity to present itself to me at the right time in the right place, so that way I could start teaching classes when it was really good for me to do it, when I had the necessary space and time to actually focus on it. Did this last year. Year comes and goes. I'm busy writing away, creating books, all that good stuff, learning Amazon ads and things like that, and slowly but surely building up a community as well. Really, really just focused on serving my community and all that other stuff. And I'm not worried about classes. And then, of course, COVID-19 comes around at the beginning of the year. And, we're all scrambling a bit. I'm still working at my day job at the actual office location up until like mid-March. Because, in America, we weren't taking it seriously for the first few months. I think I don't think people were. I think a lot of people were just kind of like, they're not even taking it serious now. Let's just be brutally honest here. That's why we're seeing the spike in cases. Because, people think it's more important to cut their hair than, actually think about other people. And this illustrates this whole point about results and being careful and adjusting and adapting. A lot of people have not adjusted and adapted to the current circumstances, and they're really not. I'm kind of looking on, bemused around me at the way people are responding to the virus, and what I really see is, more than anything else, it's like they're not able to adjust and adapt. It's like, oh no, I got to go out there. I got to get my hair cut. I got to do whatever. Doesn't matter. It's more important. Well, okay, that's your choice. But my choice is to basically stay quarantined as much as possible. Like, I'm not really going out many places. I'm not really visiting people per se or any of that stuff, because I said I want to get through this. I want to get through this hopefully without even catching the damn thing. And if I do catch it, well, at least it's not going to be because I was out there having to get my damn hair cut. So, anyway, I'm waiting. And then they send us home in March. I'm like, okay, great. I spend the first month just adjusting to that. I'm dealing a bit with shock too. Like, I'm feeling some shock around some things. I'm dealing with some fears around the COVID-19 virus, all that other stuff, because it's pretty scary. Pandemic, not exactly the kind of apocalypse we were all maybe secretly hoping for, but here it is. And then in mid-April, I suddenly get hit with this bolt of inspiration, and I hear from my spirit allies, this is the time for you to start creating classes. I'm like, really? Now? We're dealing with this. Like, well, you have more time at home now. You're not having to commute. You're not having to do other stuff. This is your time. Okay, that's when the magical work came into fruition. It was a matter of timing. I set it up so that at the right time and right place, I would get confirmation that this was the right time to start creating classes. And so I start creating classes. And lo and behold, I put them out there and people start signing up for them. Amazing. I have personally felt amazed by the fact that people have been signing up for them, because you got to realize, when you put classes out there, there's a lot of heavy lifting at times with that stuff. But this time around, it's been a lot easier, and I like that. Maybe it's because people are at home, bored, and they don't have anything else to do. I don't really care. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much for those of you who've signed up. But, this worked out. It was the perfect timing. And so, I go through, and in the meantime, I start having some other things start coming together. And some adjusting and adapting. I have some realizations around some of the stuff that I'm doing. And of course, some of this is magic playing its role throughout. Because what happens is when you do magic, people have this notion that when you're doing a magical working, that it's kind of like a fixed point in time. Like, okay, I did the working, and I put it out there, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else. And in all fairness, that's because that's how Western occultism presents things. The problem with that perspective is that it's very linear. And as a space-time magician, among other things, I found that it's much more important to be in the non-linear flow of things. So one of the things that I've learned with magic is that, yeah, I can do a magical working, and then as things come up and occur, I may end up going and making some tweaks to that magical working. This is why the way I look at magical workings is I do a magical working, and I can always, and if something changes, I can always go back and tweak that magical working, because I treat the magical working like programming. It's a computer code. It's supposed to execute a program, but something comes up. Okay, let's go back and rewrite that code and get it to go where we want it to go. And so for me, when I'm working magic, magic is it's doing the ritual working, sure, but then afterwards it's adjusting and adapting to the flow of information and things going on, and it's managing things so that as things occur, I can tweak and adjust the magical work to get where I want to go. And this is why I do long-term magical workings instead of short-term, because I'm not really concerned about the short-term, because the short-term changes so quickly. The long-term, though, in the long-term game, is one where, you know, you adjust and adapt, and you look at the results that you're getting, and you tweak and change things, and then you make things continue to happen the way you want them to happen. And so for me, like, I just consistently spin things out a little bit by little bit, by a little bit, rolling and adjusting and tweaking the magic, and adjusting and tweaking everything else that I'm doing. And so, like, case in point, you know, I thought maybe I was at the very beginning of this year. If you'd asked me, "Hey Taylor, when do you think you're going to be done with your job?" I probably would have been like, "Well, 2 years from now." You know, because that was the way things were looking. Now I think I could be done with this job by the end of this year, just the way things are going, in terms of just how things are working out. And this came down to the fact that I did some timing magic, where it was like, at the right time and right place, let this happen and let me know. And I have these kind of workings set up all the time, where it's like, you know, it's kind of like putting out there like a little memo to the universe. At the right time and right place, let me know when this needs to occur. Or at the right time and right place, let this result occur. And at the same time, when other variables come in and things change around, I just adjust and adapt and tweak things until everything starts to flow together the way that I want it to. And it works out. So even tonight's video is a good example of this. Okay, yeah, I was going to originally plan to start at 6:30. I needed to step up and help out around the house. Fair enough. No problem there. I do that. And then here we are. And I ended up changing the theme of the video a little bit, because I talked about adjusting and adapting, which is an important part of timing magic, because, like I said, you're never going to be completely in control. You have to learn to adjust and adapt to situations in your life that you don't have control over. And that's where magic comes into play. That can help you get a sense of control, that can bring you out of the tailspin. But the fact of the matter is, we aren't always in control of our environments, and that's okay. If you can learn to accept that, and you can approach magic from a perspective of, at the right time in the right place, this is when I want this to happen, then you will find that things will start to line up and come together in ways that you wouldn't expect, and that the right time and right place will manifest more than even just, in this case, oh, you should start doing classes again, start at manifesting a viable second stream of income that's transforming everything for me. Now that's a result. And that's really, you know, that's the thing that we need to look at. We need to look at at the results, not just in terms of even like the immediate result, but like, what are the long-term results? Where are we going to go? What are we getting down the line that's reinforcing what we got initially? Or what do we need to tweak down the line in order to build off the momentum of that initial result? All right, well, that's it for the late video. Thank you guys for being so kind and wonderful, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.